Welcome to Keeping It Real with Jenn Godfrey. All right, so I have Lord Ashley Phipps-Warren. Did I say the name right?
Yeah, you did, yes.
Okay, great. You are joining me from the UK, and I am so excited to introduce you on the podcast, Keeping It Real. Number one, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Extremely excited to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear your story. I've heard about you and you reached out to me and I was incredibly honored. And I know you said you've had a colorful life and I'm really excited to just hear about it and all the good things that you're doing now. Where are you from? What part in the UK are you from?
So I'm right down the south of the UK in a place called Devon, and I live in a small seaside town called Torquay,
Okay.
right on the coast. Very small town.
And what's the weather like there right now?
Right now, it's been really, really hot. It's been lovely, but it doesn't last long for us. We get a few days of it, and then it gets cold again.
When you say hot, I'm in Arizona right now. So what's hot for you?
Oh, God. Hot for us is what 28?
Okay. So, yeah, let's talk about kind of where you grew up. Okay. Are you from the town that you're living in right now?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I grew up in a place called King's Kerswell, which is a very small village just outside the town that I live in now. It's literally a 10-minute drive away. Torquay was my closest town, but I started off in a small village just nearby.
Okay. You grew up there and so were your parents married? Tell me about your childhood a little bit, please.
So, my mum and dad split up when I was 4.
Okay.
And my dad was off the scene. I lost contact with him. I don't really know what went on with mum and dad then. I was too young, but I didn't make contact with my dad again until I was in my mid-30s. So he was completely off the scene. But my mother remarried to another man who was a good man. I mean, we never connected as father and son as such. But he wasn't a bad man. He was still a good man. He was good to my mum. He was good to me, but we never had a strong bond. We didn't really do anything together, or, we never sort of sat with each other or anything. We just coexisted in the same house, but he was still a good man. So yeah, my parents did split up, but he was around. But I had an older brother who sadly passed away now, but I had an older brother called Joseph. I can mention his name because he's no longer with us, but he was 8 years older than me. He was more of a father figure to me, sort of growing up. So I always had him, and me and my brother were very, very close. So yeah, that was kind of like the family life. And then when I got a little bit older, sort of the age 14, 15, my mum and John adopted a little girl, baby little girl. So I had a little sister in the house as well, which was nice. It was nice, but by that time I was already hooked into my addiction, so I didn't really get to experience having a baby sister so much because I was trapped by I started drinking at the age of 12 and I was kicked out and homeless at 15. So childhood was relatively normal until around 12. And then it started to change a little bit then. And then obviously when I got to 15, then it really, really changed and everything changed. But my younger childhood was normal, I would say.
Okay. To back it up a little bit, your name, can you tell me your full name, please?
Okay, so my full name is Mr. Lord Ashley David Clifford Phipps-Warren.
Okay,
so I'm
not. Oh my. Mm.
Yeah. So I am a Mister. I'm not a Lord. Lord is my first name.
So that's what I thought when you said Lord. I thought originally was like, are you a Lord? And then I looked you up and then I was like, okay, I was, just your name. And I go, okay, that's your name. I really like that name. That's a cool name.
It's very unusual, yes. But everybody I grew up, and even now, everybody just calls me Ash or Ashley, which is my first middle name. And when I was growing up, I mean, I've still got friends now that sort of say, where's the Lord come from? Where's Lord come from? And I'm like, Lord's my first name, man. And they never knew. because everyone just called me Ashley. Even at school, I was called Ashley, but on my passport and driving license and all my official documents, it's Lord Phipps-Warren. So Lord is actually my first name, but everybody just calls me Ash or Ashley. You're welcome to call me Lord if you want, but Ash is fine. Everybody calls me Ash.
Okay, well, I love that. So, when you said that you started, drinking and things like that, were you how old were you?
I was 12 when I had my very, very first drink, and I remember it clear as day.
Okay.
So basically, I'd come down, it was a school day, and I'd come down into the kitchen and I saw a box of wine. It's like a big box of white wine that was left on the kitchen counter. And I was only a kid, I knew what it was. I knew it was wine, I knew it was alcohol, but I never saw my parents drinking or anything. So I couldn't blame them. But they'd obviously had a drink the night before and left it out. And I just silly. I don't even know why I thought of this, but I just thought I'm going to try it. Parents are still up in bed. No one's here. No one's going to know. I'm just going to have a little bit. I just sort of had a taste. And it was like, oh, that's nice. And it sort of gave me a bit of a shiver and made me feel good. And I'll have a bit more. And I was supposed to be getting ready for school, but I ended up staying in the kitchen, just drinking this wine, glass after glass after glass of this white wine. And I was done. It was the first time I'd ever got drunk, and I passed out. I remember stumbling around the house. And my parents were smokers, and they used to, back in the 90s, we had an open fireplace. We lived in a cottage, and they used to throw their fag butts in the fireplace. And I didn't even smoke at 12, and I remember pulling them out of the fireplace and smoking these little dog end cigarettes and sort of like throwing them back in the fireplace, rolling around. I was being sick everywhere and spitting everywhere, and I just passed out, and I woke up in bed. My parents were there, the doctor was there, so they must have known I'd got into their wine. It was a very, very strange feeling because I felt really ill. I was so sick and so ill after having all that wine for the first time. And I'm being so young, it could have killed me. And as soon as I'd recovered, it was really weird because I was almost hooked on it by then because I wanted to do it again. I loved that feeling that it gave me in the first sort of hour or two of drinking that wine, even at such a young age. So I couldn't wait to do it again. And that's when the problem started because I used to, from 12 to 15, I used to sneak around the house and open the cupboards to look for alcohol that my parents had hidden in the house, or they'd have some beers in the garage for like when they had friends over or something, and I'd find it and I'd drink it. So I was drinking as often as I could, even from the age of 12. And I'll tell you something funny. Since I've gone public with my story, I had a message from my mum today on my phone. I'll just read it to you. So my mum messaged me saying, "When I think back, often you had the shakes. I thought you had a nervous disposition as I do. I think you were about 14 then. I never realised you were drinking so much alcohol at such a young age. It never crossed my mind and it should have. I feel responsible." So my mum sent me that today and it broke my heart.
Yeah. Well, did you have addiction in your family? Like you said, your dad, your biological father wasn't around. So did you have any genetic like disposition that you knew about or direct, people in front of you that your family could have seen, like maybe there was some sort of disposition
Yeah.
there?
I do know that addiction and especially alcoholism can be hereditary
Mm.
sometimes, but it's strange because I never really saw my family drink much. And if they were big drinkers, they hid it very, very well. So I don't know why I was the way I was from such a young age. It was almost like, I mean, the only way I can explain it, I know it's alcohol, but it was like a heroin addict. Like when they take heroin for the first time and they're instantly hooked. I was instantly attracted to alcohol and how it made me feel. But the problem wasn't how it made me feel. It was how it made me act and how it made me behave. And that's where things started to take a bad turn because I felt great drinking alcohol, even at a young age. But it's so sad when your mum sends you a message saying, when I used to have the shakes, so I'd tremble in the daytimes because I hadn't had a drink. And then when I'd find a drink, and if I didn't find it in the house, I'd go out and steal it from a shop, or I'd get my friend's older brothers to buy it for me. And then once I'd had the drink, I'd stop shaking. And I'm just a
Wow.
kid.
So you were like, I mean, at a young age, I mean, that's pretty young to just be, yeah,
Yeah.
back like that and be that addicted. So, how was school for you? Like you said, you were 12 and you're supposed to go to school. So, did that affect
Yeah,
you
yeah, I was
at at that age
yeah,
going to school?
yeah, so school, I was managing school quite well until my last year of school when I was 15. I used to still go to school from 12, 13, 14. So I made it through those years pretty well. I was never drunk when I went to school or anything like that, or I wouldn't drink, apart from the day that I drank on the school day in the morning, apart from the first time. I'd never wake up in the morning and go, oh, I'll go and drink and then go to school. I used to go to school as normal and then come home and then mum, they've gone to bed. Where's the booze? I'll go and find some and I'll sneak a bit
Okay,
of
so it
booze
was at night. You were, like, kind of binge drinking or drinking more at
at
nighttime.
night. Yeah. So I'd drink and it would help me fall asleep and I'd feel all good and warm and cozy and nice. And, and I'd go to bed, wake up in the morning with a terrible headache, get ready and go to school.
Well,
My last year of school was horrendous because at 15, I was homeless then. I was kicked out of the house
what was
because I was
the reason for that? Like, what happened to for your family to kick you out at 15?
there was a multitude of different reasons that sort of built up over time, but the big one that got me kicked out is I mean, I was always problematic. Whenever I drank, I'd become a problem. My behavior would change so dramatically. It was like I talk about like Jekyll and Hyde and on a lot of the time, but I would drink, I would just turn into a completely unrecognizable person. And I would cause so many problems, and I mean bad problems. I'd smash the house to pieces. I'd smash the windows. I'd get knives out of the kitchen and rip up the sofas just in a drunken state of anger, which I had no idea where it came from. And by the time I was doing this, sort of 14, 15, my little sister was in the house that we'd adopted. So there was now a baby in the house. So my parents are like, we just can't keep going through this over and over and over again. But anyway, what the big turning point was they went on holiday. So because of my behavior, I stopped being invited on holidays. So they'd go on holiday and I'd stay at home. So I'd be home alone while my parents went on holiday, or they'd send me to a friend's house or something. They wouldn't want me to go on holiday with them because of my behavior and my drinking. So they'd go away on holiday. They'd say, find a friend to stay with. If you can't find a friend to stay with, you're going to have to stay home on your own. And this one particular time, they went away for, I think it was about 5 days. And I was like, great. And my parents were quite well off back then. They had a really big house, marble floors,
Wow.
6 sofas in the living room. It was a big, nice house. I went, you know what? I'm going to throw a massive house party.
Of course you are. Why wouldn't you? Every teenager can't do that if the parents go out of
Of
town.
course, yeah, I know, but this house party got.
That's not uncommon.
That's
But
what I,
that was the breaking point for your parents when they came home?
Well, they came home to thousands upon thousands of pounds worth of damage.
Oh,
The house was wrecked, like absolutely wrecked. So this house party got completely out of control. People were calling people up from different towns. Everybody was turning up. I probably had about 1,000 people in my mum's mansion house. People I didn't even know. People were stealing stuff, like they were stealing ornaments, and I think someone tried walking out of the house with a sofa at one point.
oh no,
And
oh no, okay. So it
yeah,
got
it got really bad. Mirrors got smashed, windows got smashed.
wow.
There was kids having sex in bedrooms and things. It was just absolute carnage. And I was just allowing the whole thing. I didn't care because I was so drunk. I didn't care. I was having a time of my life. It was amazing. And because my parents weren't there, I had this kind of weird godlike complex. Like, this is my house, this big, nice, posh house. This is my house. And like, people were coming up going, who lives in this house then? And I was like, me, I live in this house, sort of showing off. And looking back, it was absolutely ridiculous because the damage, stealing all my mum's husband's power tools from the garage. We had a pool table. We had a big playroom with a pool table in it. It got ripped to shreds, drinks spilled everywhere, red wine up the wall, smashed glass everywhere, rips in the sofas. And my parents came, and when I finally managed to get everybody out of this house, I'm standing there and I'm starting to sober up and I'm thinking, excuse my language, but I'm thinking, shit, how am I going to clean this up? How am I going to cover this up? My parents are coming home today and it's an absolute state. And I tried my hardest to clean up, but you just can't cover up the damage.
Yeah.
Smashed windows, you know, red wine up the walls. It was absolutely horrific. And they come home and it was almost like an instant, you're out, go.
Yeah.
We
I
don't
can
want you here.
imagine. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That sounds wild. And did anybody get
Mm.
hurt?
Not as far as I know. I mean, they could have done, but to be honest, I was so drunk, I wouldn't have noticed anyway. I think everybody was just having a really good time. And you know what people are like when they turn up at people's houses. There's no adults around. We were all kids. We were just kids running riot in my parents' house, just drinking and just getting high as a kite, and just nobody cared. It wasn't their house. I should have cared about my parents' house, and I didn't. And all the people that were turning up didn't care whose house it was. They were just like, it's a free house party. You see it on films, don't you? It was like something off a movie.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
and it
mean,
was
and I've been to
absolutely
parties, maybe not that crazy, but I've been to some wild ones. At that point, when she comes home, I mean, are you guys, I'm assuming she's devastated,
yeah,
but
oh God, yeah, yeah.
so she just kicks you out?
Pretty much, it just kicked me out. I mean, I had warning after warning after warning, and the funny thing is, I was still only 15. I was still a child. I was still a minor. And this is the funny thing with this, because back then I didn't care. They kicked me out. I just went, yeah, whatever, whatever. It was not, it was never, and nothing was ever my fault. I was always the victim. I was always playing the victim. And they said, no, you got to go. And I think they thought that I was just going to go and stay at a friend's house or something, which I did for a while. I went to different friends' houses, but by 15, from that day, that was the day I was gone. And I didn't actually believe that I was gone. I thought they're saying I'm kicked out. I'll go back in an hour and knock on the door and they'll let me in, which I did. I thought, well, actually, I went out, got drunk again, drank a skinful. It was probably about 10 o'clock at night. And I went and knocked on my parents' door, thinking, oh, they'll let me in now. And my mum's husband came down the stairs, said, what are you doing here? I said, well, are you going to let me in or what? And he was like, no. And I was like, well, I'm freezing cold. I've got no coat or anything. It's December. I'm freezing. I'm 15. What are you doing? You're not really kicking me out. And he went and got a little thin blanket, a little yellow blanket, and gave it to him, passed it to me through the window and said, you're out, you're gone. We don't want you here. And I was like, oh, shit, okay, maybe this is actually happening then. And that was it then. From that day forward, I was then a 15-year-old homeless alcoholic. And it just spiraled from there. And the funny thing is, and I was thinking about this quite a lot recently, since I've gone public with my story, I can't seem to get to grips with my homelessness at such a young age, because I was still at school, so I was juggling being homeless and going to school. Sometimes I had a really good friend that used to put me up sometimes when he could, when I was sober. As long as I was sober, he'd say, you can come and stay at my house. But it was very rare that I was sober. So a lot of the time, I would go to school, I'd have my school uniform on, and I would wear my school uniform for about 2 weeks without taking it off. I'd sleep in it, I'd wear it to school, I'd come out of school, I'd go and steal booze from the shop, pass out in the park on a park bench or in a bush somewhere in my school uniform, and then wake up in the morning when the birds are singing. I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh God, how do I feel today? Do I go to school or do I just go and drink again for the day? So sometimes, my last year of school, sometimes I'd go, sometimes I wouldn't. But what I really struggle with looking back now as an adult is, where were the adults? Where were they? Because I look back and I know it was the early 90s in the UK in a small town, but I think if I saw a 15-year-old kid in a school uniform sleeping rough in a park with a bottle of wine next to him, I'd be on the phone to the police and social services. Then, like, guys, look, there's a kid here. He looks like he's homeless and he's wearing a school uniform. That never happened. Nobody ever did that.
How big was your town, and did people know who you were? Like, was it a small town and were people just complacent, like, oh, we know who he is, it's the or was it,
I
is it,
think so, like, part of me I'm trying to piece it all together because it was such a long time ago.
yeah,
And and because I was like, my memories are all very, very fuzzy of the last 30 years, because I was in this addiction for 30 years. I'm 42 now, and I only got sober 2 years ago. So from 12 to then is 30 years of absolute carnage and chaos. So I'm trying to piece it together, and I'm thinking, did people just know who I was and they were like, oh, we know him, that's Ash, he's a pisshead, just leave him.
Yeah,
Or
he's the
or what?
wild, crazy one, and
He's the wild one, he's the crazy one, and even at such a young age. But then I think to myself, even now, if like there was just nothing, there was no help, nobody seemed to care. I had two friends that seemed to care. But the thing is, I didn't tell a lot of people that I was homeless. A lot of people didn't know. I kept it to myself, apart from this couple of friends that used to help me out sometimes. Even my teachers at school didn't know until later down the line that I was actually sleeping rough on the streets, because I never told anyone, because I was still at school. I was 15. I still wanted to be liked. I still wanted to fit in. I still wanted to have friends. And I was embarrassed that I was actually now, I'm 15 and I'm now an alcoholic. I'm dependent on alcohol, and I've got no home. I live on the streets. So I used to shower at my friend's house once every 2 or 3 weeks. And if his mum was at work or whatever, he'd wash my school uniform for me. So I was going to school sometimes in a dirty school uniform, stinking. I remember I used to go to school in the morning, and I'd go to the toilets at school to wash my face and hands and stuff, and sort of do my hair a little bit when I had some, to try and make myself look a bit more presentable.
I'm trying to piece it together too, like listening to you. So when you were sleeping like in the park, were there other homeless people there? Was it just you? I mean, how big of a town were you in? Like, and was it safe? I mean, that's my
No,
like
it wasn't. It wasn't safe, because sometimes I would sort of sneak off on my own. If I had like some beers or a bottle of wine, I'd usually steal it from the shops because I had no money. I would go somewhere by myself. I'd sort of sneak off and find a little place I could just sit and drink, and I'd just drink until I passed out in a little park tucked away somewhere, or, and anywhere really that I could find where there was no one else around. But, as time went on, and then I started to get to know other homeless people, but these were adults. There was no other homeless kids my age. These were adults. I remember when I wasn't going to school for a while, sometimes I wouldn't go to school for a week. And I went over to the neighboring town, a town called Exeter, and I used to sleep over there. And I used to sleep under a bridge. There was like a bridge in Exeter, under the bridge where all the heroin addicts and the crackheads used to sleep. And I used to sleep down there with them.
were you doing those types of drugs at that point, or were you
No,
primarily like
no. And I
alcohol?
wasn't. And I wasn't doing those drugs. And the crazy thing is, even through my whole 30 years of my addiction, I never touched those drugs. I did have a problem with cocaine, though. That came into play later on. But because I'll be honest, when I was sleeping under the bridge with these heroin addicts, I was still a kid and I was scared. I was scared shitless, really. But I had nowhere else to go. There was nowhere else to go, and I was getting fed up of being on my own all the time. So it was a bit of company, and
Did
it,
you
it
ever
was like
see your family at all? Like, when you were homeless, like, did you ever get to go home for, like, a birthday or a dinner, or, like, or were you just completely,
no,
entirely cut off?
no, I was entirely cut off. I was completely cut off. There was a few times where I was like, I'd had enough, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go back to my parents and just knock on the door. And I used to go back to my mum's house, the big house that she lived in, the big mansion house. And I used to knock on the door, and they would never let me in. They just turn me away every time. And I'd just go back, okay, right, back on the streets, or try and get hold of a friend. And back then it was very different, because I don't even think we had mobile phones then. I don't even think mobile phones existed. So, it was very difficult to contact anybody. And I found myself sometimes walking around, knocking on all my friends' doors to see if they'd let me in. Most of the time they wouldn't, because I was so drunk, stumbling around the town. And I was still a kid at this point. And I really, really struggle to kind of process that memory, because it was such a long time ago. But I mean, in this now, in 2026, if you saw a kid at that age homeless drinking alcohol in their school uniform, social services would be involved, the police would be involved. Like, there's no way that anybody would just allow that. So when I look back and I think, how did I live like that? How did I do that at such a young age as well? Like, where was everybody? But at the time, I didn't care. I was so in drink, I just did not care. It didn't bother me. As long as I was drunk, I was fine. But I look back now as an adult and I think, where was everybody? Where was the help? Why did nobody come and sort of save me at such a young age?
Well, I
Really bizarre.
That's probably the beauty of your story though, right? Like you said, nobody saved you, and I do think that we live in such a society now where everybody wants to take a perfect pill. They wanna be saved, they wanna be perfect on social media. It was just it's so different now. Like, even now, I
Mm.
have kids, and I won't even let my kids go to the park right down the street without a parent. Like, there's no way
Course, yeah.
I would
It's
allow
just a completely different world. I've got
it.
children of my own now, and I just could not imagine them doing what I did. I wouldn't allow it for
No,
starters.
no.
I
I
wouldn't
mean,
allow it, and I don't. And I'm not saying this. I'm not saying this to try and badmouth my mum because
well,
the way I sort of say it is like my mum was doing wrong by kicking me out and stuff. And I think she did the right thing by kicking me out. I think she was protecting my little sister and I was so out of control. But then I also think to myself, and this is where the story takes a strange turn, and you won't believe what I'm going to say now. So, my mum's job, what she did for a living when I was growing up and when she kicked me out of the house, was she was a foster carer for troubled children.
wow, okay. That's quite
So,
interesting.
changes everything. So she was a foster carer for troubled children, children that had troubled backgrounds, behavioral problems. So that's why we had this such a massive house. We had lots of rooms in the house, and I had foster brothers, foster sisters that were all all kids really, but they were a handful and they were really really hard work. So I look back now and I think to myself, I'm a troubled child. I'm your son. So you quite happily look after all the other people's children and get paid for it, but I have to go. And that always sat bad with me, and it sat bad with my brother as well. And if my mum does see this, I do apologise. I don't want to speak badly of her. She had her reasons for kicking me out. But I can't comprehend that either. I think, how can you look after other people's kids that are troubled, but you won't help your own son that's obviously troubled and has troubles? Because, and I now I think to myself, after these other kids, she didn't get paid to look after me. So sometimes I think she kicked me out of the house. It opens up another room in the house. She can have another kid in there, another troubled kid, and she can get paid for it. And I'm out on my arse. And I can't sort of work it out, and I will never ever know the answer. But that's another thing that has always played on my mind. Like, why is that? And I know I was a handful, I know I was hard work, but I was still just a kid. I was just a kid. And I think, why? Like, why did my mum and her husband do that to me?
There were times where I would go to my dad for things, and my dad would look at me and say, "You're just like your mother. I'm not
I
gonna
used I used to get that as well. You just like your dad.
like your mother," you know?
Yeah.
And do you know how traumatizing that is to say to a child too? Like,
Mm,
"What do you mean? I'm just," and then you hear them talk negative, 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 and then,
yeah.
it's so, and I don't think that they know they're doing that. I don't think that they know the side effects of that, but, I mean,
Yeah,
and that's horrible to think about because, yeah, you're thinking, "I'm your kid, I need help." Obviously, you need help, but you think, "Oh, well, my parents don't care and don't love me anymore, and they're taking care of all these other kids now." And you've
mm,
been
mm.
right.
But in hindsight, I look back and I do know it was they were doing the right thing. I was a problem, and I hold my hands up and I own up to everything I've done in my life, and I've done some very very horrific things, even from a young age, playing up like that. And I was the problem, and the problem had to go. But I didn't realize that I was such a big problem, and I've never really understand why my parents kicked me out, but then I do, because I think, especially back then, in the time that it was then, back in the 90s, it was just get out the house anymore. But the sad thing about it is, I was such a problem. I was shunned from my parents. I was also shunned from the entire family, my whole family, because when my nana died, and I was very close to my nana, I was still homeless at the time, and I'd found out that my nan had passed away. And I said to my mum, "Let me know when the funeral is, so I can come and say goodbye to Nana. And she was like, oh, yeah, yeah, we will. Yeah, we will. And then I later found out that they had the funeral without me. Nobody told me. And they said the whole family got together. I found this out from my brother. The whole family got together and said, do not tell Ash when the funeral is and where it is, because we do not want him coming there. So I knew I was shunned from the family. And there was another time as well. My brother, just before he died, 3 years before he passed away, this was later down the line. I was an adult by this time. Passed away about 6 years ago. But when he moved to Canada, his wife was Canadian, and he had his kids. Now they had a leaving do for the family and friends to have a little leaving party for my brother before we went to Canada. And I also found out that all the family got together and said, do not tell Ash when Joseph's leaving party is or where it is, what time it is, where it is, nothing, because we do not want him there. Because I was that much of a problem that nobody wanted me at these events. And then there was no more Christmases, there was no more parties, birthdays, family events, weddings, funerals. I was out of all of it. There was nothing. I wasn't invited to anything. I remember spending Christmas Day once sitting in a park on my own, and a little old lady came out of her house and gave me a turkey and stuffing sandwich because she felt sorry for me on Christmas Day. While all my family and parents are all having a great big party. So, and don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming anybody but myself. I was a nightmare. I was such a horrible, nasty drunk, and I was so bad. And the problem is, I manifested all that life for myself. I created that life for myself. So I can't blame anybody else. But that's how bad it got. And this was even at a young age. That's how bad things got for me, where the family just did not want me around. I was shunned from the whole family. And then not long after that, I started to get shunned from my whole community. The whole of Torquay started to shun me, started to lose my friends because of my drinking. I was banned from every pub, every nightclub, certain shops, restaurants wouldn't let me in, and that went over 3 different towns. So where I live, you got Torquay, Paignton, and Brixham, and I wasn't allowed to go anywhere because my behaviour was so bad, and I was such an aggressive, nasty drunk, and I wasn't allowed anywhere. So in my mind, and I'm still quite young at this time, I'm thinking, right, I've got this alcohol problem. I'm dependent on alcohol now. I need alcohol to get through the days and the nights. I've lost my family. I've lost my friends. I now can't go anywhere within my community. I'm banned from ever. I can't even go to a pub and have a pint with my mates because I'm not allowed in. And that's when things took an even darker turn, because then I was like, right, well, what do I do now? I've got nothing else. This is the only identity I know. And that led to prison. I was starting to get arrested by the police then, getting nicked.
Did you ever have times where you tried to get a job or tried to go into some sort of a facility before things got to that point? Like, did you from the time you
Yeah,
were, like, 15 kicked out, did you ever go to, like, a church or try to go somewhere and get did you have any of that awareness? Did you know, like, to do anything like that or try to
never
do
went.
any
No, not really. I just kind of sort of rode it out and just lived it because I didn't know anything different. Because I was so young when I started, and I didn't know any different. So I was just living this life of complete chaos, and I had nothing else. So I just accepted the fact that I was shunned from the community, and and it's really horrible feeling to feel that alienated from everybody else. But because all I cared about was the alcohol, I was like, right. Then I started to become more angry. I started to get more angry, like, and it's everybody else's fault. So then I'd drink, and then I'd start to play up. My behavior would start to change. I'd start to become more violent, more aggressive when I did drink. And it just spiraled and spiraled and spiraled and just got further and further out of control.
how old were you when you were picked up and did you first went to jail?
21.
Okay, and what was that for?
Oh, awful, but I'm going to tell you the truth because I think it needs to be told. So I committed quite a serious robbery, a street robbery. I was very, very drunk, incredibly drunk. I was in a pub, and I came out of the pub. Ran out of money, and I wanted to get some more money to drink some more. I'd never done anything like this before. I'd been arrested for like some smaller drunken disorderlies before and
Mhm.
things like that. And I think I had like a few sort of like fights and stuff, but nothing as big as this. And I come out of this pub, and the first guy I saw that sort of, looked okay to kind of rob, I went over to him, asked him for his wallet, asked him for his phone, just basically give me everything you got in this drunken rage as well. I was just an absolute madman. It's like, I think he told me to F off, and he got up in my face, like, I'm not giving you my wallet. And it haunts me even to this day. I have nightmares about this. I grabbed him by the face and I bit him on his nose, and I latched and I bit his nose off his face.
Oh, wow.
So I'd ripped his nose off his face. He fell on the floor, bleeding, like, oh my God, oh my God. I had his nose in my mouth and I spat it at him, covered in blood. I put my hand in his pocket, pulled out his wallet, took the money out of his wallet. There was only about, I don't know, between £8 to £12 in there. Took his money and went back in the pub. Well, no, I went to a different pub and spent the money on beer, and didn't nothing of it. Went in the bathroom, cleaned my face up, got the blood off me, and then carried on drinking back on the streets. They didn't find me, and awful to talk about because it makes me feel like such a bad person. I really was, and I've got to live with this for the rest of my life, because I'm not that man anymore. I've changed so dramatically, and it haunts me every day that I did that. But the police didn't find me for about 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So I was still wandering around the different towns, just drinking away. The police couldn't find me. And I remember it. I remember it really well. I was walking through Newton Abbot, and an officer came up and sort of pat me on the shoulder and asked who I was, and sort of like grabbed me and arrested me there on the spot. And the reason they knew it was me, because it was all caught on camera. So when I was arrested, they had it on camera, so you could see it was me. They just couldn't find me for 2 weeks. So I thought I got away with it. And I just carried on drinking because that's all I knew what to do. And I eventually forgot about it until I got arrested. And I just thought, my God, how I'm arrested. And then I got an 8-year sentence. And in the UK, we serve half our sentence. So I did 4 years on that sentence, which in a way was good because I couldn't drink in prison. There was no alcohol. So
Okay.
you'd think committing a crime that serious and doing something that serious would make you go, Jesus Christ, I need to stop drinking because it's making me do really, really bad things. And this was just one bad thing that I did. I've done more since. I did more since. And it was all alcohol. Every single time I got arrested, it was alcohol. I was alcohol fueled. I've never been arrested sober. I've never got into a fight sober. Nothing bad has ever happened to me sober. It's always when I drink, and it was a horrible, horrible time. But you'd think doing that prison sentence got me drinking. For a little while, I thought it would. I was in there and I thought, well, I'm going to stop drinking now. And then as soon as I was released from prison, I remember it. The day I was released from prison after doing 4 years, I come out of Exeter jail, and right over the road was a co-op. I went straight to the co-op, bought a can of Stella and drank it. And then I was right back where I'd started again. It's almost like a mental health problem. It was like, why am I doing that?
Did you do any type of, like, treatments or anything like that when you were in prison? Did you know, like, and did you know at that time, did you really know that I'm assuming you knew you had a drinking problem and you were an alcoholic, but did you know how bad it really was, like, truly was? Like, did you just think, "Oh, I was just drunk, like, I just need to quit drinking and I'm gonna change and I'm gonna be a better person," or did you know, like, that you really had, like, the biggest problem, like, this kind of a problem? Were you like, did you come to your own aha moment at that, like, knowing at least knowing that you were dangerous and
Not
probably
really. Not really. I can't. It's very strange because at this point, although what I did to this poor, poor fella was horrific, it's kind of like when I went to prison for it. I mean, I'm a bit freaked out. It's my first time in prison, and I kind of like I almost wore it like a badge of honor to fit in prison. But I kind of sort of like owned it, wore it as a badge of honor. Yeah, this is what I did, even though I felt terrible about it. Almost had to pretend that I didn't to make everybody else in jail think, oh, I don't want to mess with that guy, you know. And but because the truth is, I was never a hard man. I was never a big fighter. I'm not a big tough, roughy toughy guy. You know, I was a kid really playing dress up, and every time I drank, it turned me into something I hated. But when I was in prison, I'm thinking, I don't know how to survive in prison. And I had a really, really tough time in prison because I got attacked by two inmates, got into a fight with one of them, and the other one got me from behind, and they beat the living life out of me, and they put my ankle over we got metal stairs that go up to the different floors on the wing, and my ankle over there, and one of them jumped on it and it shattered my ankle in four places. So I'm straight to the hospital. I thought I was going to lose my ankle or lose part of my leg. Found out they could save it. So I've got all metal work in my leg now. I've got a little bit of a limp in that. And I was convinced that that happened to me in prison because of something that I did on the outside when I was drunk. Bad things used to happen to me all the time because of my drinking. And I always used to think to myself, who have I upset now? You know, maybe, and I was thinking to myself, why did these guys attack me and break my leg? And now I'm in prison with one working leg. I'm on crutches, so I can't even go to the servery and collect my food. But luckily, I got padded up with another prisoner, another inmate, who was really good. He looked after me really well. He used to get my food for me and everything like that and bring it to the cell. And so I was able to be a little bit more comfortable in a very, very uncomfortable environment. And you'd think that that would put you off and that would stop a man from drinking and go, do you know what? This is really bad. But it didn't. As soon as I came out, I was right back on the drink again. Then I ended up going to a rehab center when I thought, do you know what? I've had enough. Like, things are just really, really bad.
When you got out of prison, did you at least go to, like, some sort of, like, a sober living or some sort, or were you homeless again when you got out of prison?
Well,
Did
when
you
I
have
when I first came out of jail, when I came out of prison, I was homeless. I was back on the streets again.
So, that's kind of crazy to me. Can you explain to me how that works? Like, I've thankfully never, not to say that I'm better than any of that. I've just never been in a position where I've, been to a prison. I have actually been to prison, like,
Yeah.
not because I've been in it, but I went and I did H&I. So I used to do hospitals and institutions. So
Mhm.
um, there's really not much anybody could ever tell me, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, you saw my mouth drop and I'm like, "Holy shit," excuse my French, like, "What?" Um, but I do think that good people do bad things, and
Yes.
I think that addiction is something that has no discrimination. So, if you tell me, "Oh, I just did something because I like to, and I wasn't on anything, I just wanna do it," like, that's where I would say you're probably a freaking sociopath, like, you're crazy, like, that's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
But if somebody says, like, you don't know what you're doing, right? Like, you're out of your mind. That's
You
the
don't
thing
know what you're doing.
people don't understand that. Like,
No.
when you're
And this
in
is the
any sort
thing.
of
It's like,
substance, it's
yeah,
not it's not you doing it. I mean, like, yes, it's you physically doing it, but it's not like a lot of the times
it's like a blackout.
you
You
ask someone that
sometimes,
gets in a car accident or they kill somebody and they say, "Don't drink and drive." Well, there's a reason, because when
yeah,
you are intoxicated and you're drinking and you're driving, you might not know what you're gonna do. Like, you kill
yeah.
somebody, go back. You
This
just
is
can't.
this is
And
why alcohol is so dangerous. I think it's the most dangerous drug on the planet. It's such a dangerous thing, and I do believe that good people are always tormented by the bad things that they've done. That's very, very true. Good people are tormented by the bad things that they've done because if you do a bad thing and it haunts you for the rest of your life, then you're a good person. You've just done some bad things. You know, I'm not a bad human being. I've just done some bad things, and the bad things I've done torment me. They torment me even now. But you know, it's when you get people that do bad things and don't think they're bad things, they're the bad ones. They're the
Right,
really dangerous
they don't
people.
feel I mean, they call that like a non-conscious,
Mm,
I've done some research on it, but, they call it they have no conscience babies, right? Where I mean, and I think by definition, that would be kinda considered like a sociopath, like
yeah,
somebody they just don't know, like, they don't know the
no,
difference, they don't know how to feel, and that would be more, that's scary. That's like a Silence of the Lambs, like, crazy thing, but that's one of the reasons that I really talk about the alcohol. It's because it's so sociably acceptable.
it is. I mean, it's the only drug that's sold to us as fun.
Mhm.
It was only last night I was watching TV and an advert came on for Kronenberg Lager, and I was watching it and I was thinking, I just can't believe how they advertise this stuff. This stuff is a toxic poison. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against people that drink. I never have been. I know there are lots of people out there that can drink sensibly, and that's fine. There's so many people out there can have a couple of beers of an evening or go out on a hot summer's day, have a few drinks, and they don't get violent and they don't get arrested and they don't smash places up or, do these horrible, nasty things or commit crimes. There's so many people that are like that. So I don't think alcohol as such is a bad thing for some people, but for some of us, it really is. And I was one of those people. And it's just I look at the adverts for alcohol now, and they glamorize it so much. They make it look like such a lovely thing, and they're big parties and drinking Kronenberg and all these nice drinks. And you watch the telly and you watch the adverts for alcohol. How much fun they make it look, and how much they glorify it and glamorize it. And I'm watching it, I'm thinking, you never ever see the other side, do you? That you never see an advert of someone drinking and then smashing a place up or robbing someone and biting their nose off. You never see that. Why do we not see that? Because that's the reality of alcohol. That's where alcohol can lead you. It led me there, it's led many other people there, and it's a very, very dark, dangerous place to be in. So, why do they not advertise alcohol correctly? Because I think they should. Advertising it as fun, and this is why it's such a big problem, especially in my town with young people. And this is why I do what I do now. This is why I've got into recovery. I've written these books. I go and talk these different places, share my story, and I help people with their recovery. That's what I do now. That's my main goal. But why do these poor young kids have to grow up in a world, in a society where alcohol is glorified so much that they think, oh, that looks good. I'm going to do that. That looks really good fun. I'm going to do that, because they don't do it with anything else. There's no other drug on the planet that they do that with. Every other drug is looked at badly. Heroin, very, very bad. Cocaine, very, very bad. It's advertised as bad.
Fentanyl, I mean, look at the fentanyl, like, with fentanyl too. I mean, fentanyl is laced with pretty much everything right now, and,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm terrified. I have small kids, you said you do. I
yeah,
am terrified. Breaking a cycle for me is not I don't smoke, I don't drink, my kids will never have to see me do any of that, and I hope
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
God, I hope and
yeah,
pray. You were in such it had such a hold of you, obviously, right? I mean, you bit someone's nose off, you were doing some pretty hectic, horrible things, right? Chaos causing chaos and all of the stuff, right? But you were able to see it and stop, right? And you're
was,
totally night and day
yeah,
different. And
I'm
how did
completely
that
night
how
and
was
day
that
different.
able I mean, like, when was your breaking point with it? Like, when did you look in the mirror
So,
and
I'm gonna try and talk about this without getting emotional. When I speak about this before, I end up bursting into tears. So do bear with me. I'm gonna try my
okay.
best to
Yeah,
to talk about
please,
this one.
please.
So I did multiple different horrible things in my life. I went to prison. I've told you about that one. I went to rehab. I came out of rehab. I was drinking again. Ended up going to prison again for a long sentence. I got a 6 year sentence and did three. So I did 7 years altogether in prison over two sentences. I did 2 years in rehab over two different sentences in rehab. And it still didn't really work. I mean, the second time I was in rehab helped a lot more than the first time, because I was starting to get ready to want to change. I was thinking in my head, I really want to change. I really want to sort myself out. Went to this rehab center, did really, really well, came out, thought, you know what, I'm fixed. I'm absolutely fixed. I'm fine. And I went for a period of doing quite well. And then I had some relapses. And during those relapses, there was one time I was really, really, really drunk and I tried to take my own life. I put a belt around my neck, put it around the light fitting, kicked the kitchen chair away, and I was hanging there. And I thought I was done for. I felt my body go all warm. I passed out, and I thought, that's it. I'm out of it. I'm done. This is the end of that. And then I woke up and I was on the floor. And I was laying on the floor and I'm looking around. I'm thinking, what the hell has just happened? And I've noticed I've got a belt around my neck and there's plaster all around me on the floor. Like, what's happened? I look up and the ceiling, the light fitting that I attached the belt to, had pulled through the ceiling. So I was too heavy. The weight couldn't hold me. My body weight couldn't. The light fitting couldn't hold my body weight, and it had ended up pulling through the ceiling, which led me to land on the floor. I can't. That's the first time I've been able to talk about that without bursting into tears, without crying. And because I think I've told this story a few times now, and it's getting easier for me to talk about. But that's the first ever time I've ever spoke about that without crying. So that's a huge achievement for me right there. Because usually I burst,
For
I break
sharing that.
down.
I mean, thank you for sharing that, and I'm sorry that
Mm,
that's how you felt, and, one of my I've never shared this before, but one of my best friends, her name was Sarah, and she was successful, and she did hang herself, and her
okay.
fiancé beat her, and that was I mean, when I got that call, it was awful for me,
Yeah,
um, and I'm something something was saving you. You weren't meant to go, as
no,
desperate as you may have felt,
it wasn't
and
my time, and a lot of people are saying that to me now. Like, since people didn't even know about that story. There was only a handful of people that knew about that. And I said to because I was at my friend's flat when I did it. He wasn't there. He came back and found out about it. I had to go to hospital and everything and get checked over and mental health teams and all this business. And, and it was an awful, awful time. But I told the people that knew, I said, don't tell anyone. I don't want anybody to know about this. And they respected that and didn't tell anyone. And it's only really recently since I've come public with my story that people know about it. And I do try and share that part on these podcasts and in my books as well, because I think it's an important part of my story, but because it's a huge part of my recovery. That's what changed everything for me, really, because once I'd had that realization that I've tried to commit suicide, it didn't work. Why did it not work? And how grateful am I that it didn't work and I'm still here? So this is now a sign from the universe for another chance at life. And that's when things started to change for me. And I really started to look at things differently then. And I thought, you know what? I'm so grateful that I've survived. I'm so grateful that I'm still here. And everything started to change. My thought process changed. And that's what my first book, The Inner Upgrade, that's what it's all about. It's all about my transformation and my recovery. Now, I can never, ever take back the bad things that I've done. And I've only touched on a few of them because obviously for time, I can't sit here and tell you 30 years of my addiction in the time that we have. But I've gone through all of these horrible things and I can't take them back. The robbery victim, I can never change that for him. He could be a changed man for the rest of his life. And all I can ever do is be completely sorry. All the family that I
did you
lost.
have a chance to send him a letter or
No,
apologize?
no, I wasn't allowed to do anything like that. I've even looked into it since I've been sober and tried to find it. I didn't even know the guy's name. They wouldn't tell me. And even now, a bit as a sober man, if I could sit in a room with that man and talk to him, I would. But I just don't know what I'd break down into tears probably because I'm not that person. I'm not that person anymore, and I don't think I was ever that person ever. I think it was the alcohol changed me so much. It made me someone I hated. I do things that I hated. But when I had that suicide attempt, I mean, before the suicide attempt, there was other things that happened. We could be here all day talking about it. But that's when my life changed. I found spirituality. I started learn about the law of attraction and manifestation, and how you can change your thought process, change the way you think. And when you change the way you think, it changes the way you act. And when you change the way you act, it changes what happens in your reality. And I'm now a really, really deep spiritual person. And I wake up in the morning and I say all my affirmations and things and my thank yous to the universe, and thank you for my life, and thank you for my children. And, and during my sobriety, and I've got my children back in my life. My kids are back with me. My youngest son lives with me full time.
How
I've got
old are
another.
your children?
My youngest son is 13, and my
Okay.
eldest son is 16.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and they're both back in my life now. My youngest son lives with me full time, completely. He's been with me for 5 years now. Um, he's a fantastic lad. But when he came to me, I'd started my sobriety journey. Now I've only been sober 2 years, mind, but my sobriety journey started around about 10 years ago. That's when I say my journey started. Now, even though I've only been completely clean and sober for 2 years, my journey started a long time ago, because you have the relapse periods,
Yeah.
and relapse is part of the sobriety journey. So I always say to people that are struggling, and I get a lot of messages now as well since I've been doing what I'm doing and sort of trying to promote this positive thinking and changing your way of thinking. People are like, oh, I feel like I failed. I was sober for 2 weeks and then I ended up going out and having a session. And I say, no, you haven't failed. You do that as many times as you need to until you finally crack it. Having a relapse, and this isn't an excuse to go and drink. Don't just use a relapse to excuse yourself to go and drink. But relapses do happen. They do happen, and I think anybody that goes in, especially in early sobriety, is going to go through that process. And I think you have to go through that process as part of the learning curve of being able to go, okay, I was sober for 2 weeks. I've had a slip up. Okay, now how do I prevent that slip up from happening again? Because we learn from our mistakes, and I've got 30 years of mistakes that I've learned from, and I'm living proof that you can change and it can be done. And I'll tell you something, since I've been sober in the 2 years, I've achieved 100% of everything I've wanted to do since being sober. And I've done it all through changing my thought process, manifesting a better life. I wanted to write these books. I've written these books. I wanted to help people that are struggling like I did in addiction, homelessness, mental health, anger issues. I want to help these people so much because it's my way of giving back. I took so much from so many people that the rest, that all I've got left in this life now is to give back. That's all I want to do, is give something back. So all of that chaos and all that pain that I caused in the past wasn't all for nothing. Change that into something good now. And that's what I'm doing. And I've achieved everything I want to achieve whilst being sober, which is an amazing thing. I got my children back. I'm fully sober and fully clean. I wanted to write these books, and that was a huge challenge for me, but I've done it. The first book is out now, The Inner Upgrade. It's out here. Absolutely, really, really pleased with this one. The second book is released on the 29th. I'm absolutely overjoyed that I've got that one written. I've got a third one coming out in about 4 or 5 months' time, which is the trilogy of all the books. Then I thought, how can I take this even further? I want to help people with the books, but now I want to speak about my story. Like things like talking to yourself now is such a huge opportunity for me to get my story out there so people can see that you can change. I speak on podcasts now. I speak in AA meetings around in the community to other people that are struggling with alcohol. I went to my old rehab center that I was in back in 2011. I spent a year there. I was up there last week talking to the residents, sharing my story with them. The college in Torquay have invited me down there to speak to them. So I'm going up to Hastings on Sunday, and on the Monday, I'm doing a presentation at the local homeless charity shelter there to talk to them. And I'm just like, it's incredible for me that I've got the opportunity to do this, and I can share my story, and I can show people that It's never the end, no matter how dark things get, and no matter how bad things get with your addiction, and you think that you've had enough. It's never the end. It's never your final destination. You really can change your life if you want to. You've just got to want to change your thought process, make a plan, put it into action, stick with it, never ever give up, and you can become and do anything you want to do. And that's how I live my life now. And I've had the best 2 years of my entire life, but
Well,
just
I'm
since
really
getting
happy
sober.
that you shared that. I mean, I'm proud of you. I'm happy to hear that. It sounds like you've put the work in, and that's the hardest part. I think I'm sorry that you had to go through risking your own life and wanting to take your own life to realize that you have a lot to give. So I want to say that congratulations, because you are an author. You're sober, you have a business, you are basically somebody. If someone were to talk to you and you say, "I don't have an education," somebody would say, "Oh, that guy's probably a loser," you know what I mean? Or whatever, and you're not at all. And I wanna say there are so many people that I have met in recovery and that are the most successful people, and they do say, when you are able to grab a hold of your life and you can kick the addiction, most people that do have some sort of addiction issue, whether it's alcoholism, addicts, whatever it may be, are end up being the most successful people. It's still that was the hardest part for me, is the judgment, and I don't like it. I don't like it. To this day, people that are very judgmental, I just don't like have the room for their.
Oh, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're all sharing this human experience. We're all on this planet together. And it doesn't cost a penny to be nice and kind. Everybody's going through their own battles. Everybody's going through something. Yes, I've got my story. Yes, you've got yours. And every single other person on this planet has got theirs. So a little bit of kindness and a little bit of consideration can go a very long way. And I've never really understood this big divide and this big judgment with human beings. I've never got it. We're all the same. We all bleed the same. We all bleed the same blood. So I've never understood why people judge so much, and especially people in sobriety. We almost get like frowned upon,
Yeah.
which is bizarre to me. I find it so bizarre. Even someone like me, and it's not just people that don't drink. Some people don't drink for many different reasons. They're not violent,
Mhm.
or they just don't like alcohol, but they still get frowned upon. I can understand people frowning upon me with the life that I've lived. I would accept that. They're always an ex-alcoholic, and the award nasty, nasty Lord Ashley David Clifford Phipps-Warren, and it's like, okay, yeah, fair enough. You can think that, but that's not me anymore, so don't judge me on my past. But people do, and we live in a world and everybody's different, and we're never going to be able to change the world, and we're certainly not going to be able to save everybody, but we can try our very, very best to save a handful along the way if we can. So
The
that's my
most
mission.
upsetting part to me is when I go somewhere, and if anybody ever says, and they've never met me, they've never met who I'm with, and they're like, "Oh, you can't sit." Or you go somewhere and people just know who you, and they don't even say hi to you. It's like, "You know who I am. Like, why just be nice, just say hi." Like, I'm not scared. You know what I mean? It's just,
Mm,
and you still see that to this day, and so I really hope that anybody watching this, whether they're struggling with any sort of mental illness, addiction, whatever it may be,
mm,
just lighten up, right? Like, just
yeah,
be kind, be nice, and leave the judgment at the door, because, you know, at the end of the day, everyone deserves to have redemption, be kind, be nice, and help each other. Because I just think that there's not enough room for all this hate and judgment. So I'm really glad that you and I had a chance to talk, and thank you so much for sharing your story. And
it's
I'm
been
gonna leave
lovely.
one last question for you.
Sure.
When is your last book launching?
The new book it's being published tomorrow. It should be live on the 29th.
Okay.
I believe the 29th. At the very latest, the 30th, anyway. Yeah, between the 29th and the 30th, anyway, within the next couple of days.
Well, congratulations on your success, your sobriety. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm extremely happy to have met you and talk with you. And thank you for coming on the podcast. And I will share all of your information. And anybody who's listening, please, if you are struggling with anything, feel free to reach out to Lord or Ashley or Ash or me and let us know. We're always here to help anybody that is struggling. And that's what this is about. It's about a journey and happiness, health, and doing it all together in a respectful way. So, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, it's been lovely to meet you. It's been a bit emotional at times, but I've had a great time. It's been a really good conversation, and I just love being able to share these things and hopefully help some people that are listening. You never know who's listening to these things. There could be somebody that's listening and just go, "Do you know what? That's great," and we may have just saved somebody's lives. You just never know. So thank you for having me on. Really,
Well,
really
thank
great
you very
speaking to you.
much, Lord. And I'm really excited to watch you grow and all the exciting things that you do. And we'll circle back around. I'll circle back around with you soon and check in with you. And I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you
Thank,
so much. It's been a pleasure.
thank you.